Good deal. The reason why we're recording it is if you missed something or if you want to get back to it, you will have to talk to whoever signs you up, ask for the link, and you will get it probably in a couple of days. My name is Tibor, and I will be your host. I will be your demonstrator. I will be your instructor. So let's start with how the system functions in Resolve. What I have is a pre-cut story that I opened up, and I am working with it. And I'm going to do a Command E, Control E on the Windows machines. I'm going to save it where I had it physically set up for, so I can always access it. Here's a starting. Control Q, Command Q on the Macintosh. I'm using a Macintosh. And opening up the Resolve does activate the icon that represents, I'm still admitting people in the room, and double clicking on the icon, which we call it in the dock. You also know that if you are working on a standalone system and you have a C drive in the applications, you should be able to find where your Resolve material is. And in the Resolve, in my case, shows me that my app is running at version 17.3.2. That is my version. You can download this version. This is still free to download. I may have some features that may not be available for free, so you will have to buy the studio version, but here it is, the starting point. Left double clicking on the icon that represents the DaVinci Resolve, and double clicking should open it up. It identifies itself, identifies the version 17, and it is also studio. And I have a pre-cut story that I cut for you. Generally, when you start, you will always have an untitled project, and the untitled project is how you open up your NLE, in this case, application, program, or just call it Resolve. And if you right-click on the drop-down, there are project settings that are default. The default project settings are broken down into resolution in terms of pixels, 1920, 1080, and there's a whole variety of them, so you can pick and choose which is the ones that you're going to pick. And you can also pick the playback frame rate. I have it set up as a default 24, but this is where you can change it. The reason why that's important is because when you start the project from the beginning, you should know what is the frame rate, what is the aspect ratio, and what is the raster size. The raster size is the number of pixels, 1920, 1080 for high definition, or 3840 by 2160, Ultra H, or any of those combinations. Anyways, point is that I did put together a story for you already, and it is called Resolve November Webinar. So by double clicking on it, I can open it up. Now, notice that I opened up the application first, and then I identified where I'm going to be. If I go the other way, I'm going to get out of here, which is making sure that I am not running Resolve. There we go. And I do know where that particular project is. And I happen to know that it's in my FMC webinars in the November webinars. And if I go inside, I will find a DRP, which is DaVinci Resolve project extension. Identifying that is the project information. So backdoor, I should be able to left double clicking on it and open it up. Let's see if that works. The process is still the same. The application kicks in. My recommendation is always that you connect all your drives before you do anything else, and then you open up the application. The application is trying to make a copy of it. I will not. I will use the original, highlight it. The orange wireframe is around it. Left double clicking on it or hit open opens it up. Let's see what kind of trouble can we get in now. You notice that the interface is very similar to every nonlinear environment, meaning nonlinear editor. The upper left-hand corner is, by definition, called the source. I'm looking at the window that shows me the result because I have a secondary computer, so I can see how your feed comes through. And the right window is the project or the story. The bottom left through light area is the timeline, and in the timeline you can actually see images that you can move around. I'm going to play it out quickly so you can see what is waiting for you. So essentially, I have a number of titles, text that are on the video track too. And I have a pre-cut sequence that contains one angle of a multi-camera recording of a band playing live. And they're actually not playing live, they are lip syncing to the music. So I need to address that. If you ever do a multi-camera, this is actually a good session for you to work with. And there are a couple of issues that you need to address with the multi-camera. One, the event has to be one single event. Two, the cameras or the recording devices are all recording the same event at the same time. And three, the question is going to be, how do you synchronize it? And the synchronizing is the biggest challenge, because if you run different frame rates on different cameras or different GoPros or iPads or iPhones, you can come up with some really silly stuff. So try to be the same frame rate for all those devices. One, if you are not familiar with the Genlock, which is a Genlock, which means that all cameras have the same time code, you can actually use the simple slate. You know, everybody look for me, okay, camera is pointing, but then you do the slate, you know, and that's your slate, or any way you do that. In this scenario, we may or may not have the slate, so I will find out what other options are available. So in order for me to show you what I have, I open up upper left-hand corner, the pool, and in the pool, I have brought in 4 different angles: the master camera, the singer angle, the guitarist, MOV, and the drummer. The way I actually hooked up this material, or I should say connected this material, I had to go on the bottom. If you never dealt with the result, on the bottom left, well, it's actually from left to right, there are numbers of icons. Media, that's when you bring in material. Then you do a quick edit, which is kind of a quick time iMovie thing, but very sophisticated, very powerful. A lot of people kind of like it. It was introduced 2 generations ago, but generally the edit is the window that people are comfortable with. Then we can go into the Fusion, which is a animation environment. It was added 2 generations ago again, but here is what we're going to spend more time, or most time, with the color. And then we're going to do the audio, if we do the audio, which in this case we will not, because we just don't have the time, and then the deliver. So anyways, so let's go back into the media. Media is where you would bring in the material. When you say bring in, you're not importing, you're linking. And that's how Resolve is different from, let's say, for example, Premiere. Premiere, you can import ingest or just link ingest. And Resolve, you always link it, because it wants to keep, the Resolve wants to keep the quality of the color. And by definition, keep in mind that DaVinci Resolve always uses 10-bit video. So if you're working with DaVinci Resolve software, you might want to have, you know, Blackmagic cameras, because they are recording everything in 10-bit. Anyways, the point was that you can right-click in the environment and import the media. I had chosen the tool import media, and I knew exactly where my material is. In my scenario, the material was inside my drive. I still see people who's coming in and out of the room, so I need to click on them to let them in. So if you know where your material is, I believe my material is on the webinars. Inside the webinars, I have a environment, and it is, that's in essence. So that's where all the MOVs are. These are QuickTime movies, and they are a 1287-20 running at a specific frame rate. I believe it is 25. Anyways, so that's where I brought it in. One, when I brought it in, it became part of my ecosystem, and I am switching over to edit. And in edit, I defined that each of these angles, when I play them out, I'm going to play them out individually. You can stop it. You can hear a click, how the click track is counting down, and the guys are lip syncing and lip dancing to the music. So you can hear it count down at the beginning. So this is one angle, and the camera seems to be stationary. Another angle is the singer, and the camera is still kind of semi-stationary, but it slightly moves, tries to follow the singer. Same scenario, the singer is using the music to lip sync to, and it is the same performance. And the camera is zooming in, panning, all that stuff. The third angle is the guitarist. And you notice that I have the fourth angle, and that's the drummer. So essentially, if you're doing multicam, if you have not done this before, this is the way it works. You define how you're going to synchronize them. So in each of these angles, 1, 2, 3, and 4, I found a starting point where those clicks are counted down. In Resolve, unlike anybody else, you are actually able to see the audio at the same time with the video, which is like really cool. So in the upper right-hand corner of the source monitor, there is a drop down, and you can show the full clip audio. You can see the waveform, and you can scrub it. Neat. And you can also do it much more deeper, which is a zoomed in. There we go. So now you can actually zoom into a specific beat. And if you use your single frame, you can move your keyboard single frame, and that's why you can find the beats. Anyways, point is that I found the 4 different angles, and each of those angles, I define where the mark in is, step 1. Step 2, when I grouped them, I selected the 4. I right-click on one of them, and there was a create new multicam clip using selected clips. So when the dialog box comes up, it asks you, how are you going to synchronize it, based on what? You guys are coming in and out, so I have to always let you in. That stops me. Anyways, point is that you have a couple of choices. One choice is mark in, which is what I used. Mark out would work if you finish the movie or finish the action or finish the performance or finish the play or whatever you have, and you out it. So at the beginning, you probably missed all the cameras beginning, but when the show is over, please roll cameras, every camera point at me, and then you slate it and you out it. The time code is your best deal, but that's, as I said, a professional environment. I have a sound also. Sound would be analyzing if you have all cameras recording sound and the sound is clearly defined. So there is some kind of a loud noise or something that all 4 cameras captured, then you can use that and try it. It is a little bit less precise, but a lot of people still use it. Anyways, I chose the mark in, and then I created a multicam. So I put the multicam in the source monitor, and now I have the 4 different angles that I picked. Now, the 4 different angles, if you play them out, you should be able to see them all 4 moving at the same time. So let's see if I'm correct. I'm going to try to make them full window, hit the Command F, and see if you can see all 4 of them. Again, the reception on your end depends on your Wi-Fi speed. So if you have a slow Wi-Fi speed, it might be choking, but generally, if you are Ethernet, you should be all right. So it seems to me that we are pretty much in sync. So essentially what I did was put together a story, which was the multicam start. Here's how the sequence looked like. And I have the music and starting one angle, in this case, the wide angle, which is angle 2. So I'm going to play it out for you and not play out the whole thing, just a little bit of it so you can get the feeling what I'm doing. Make it full screen, click on the right window, Command F, Control F on the Windows. Okay, so again, I don't know what your style of music is. Do you like this or not? The essential issue here is that now we have the music that is on audio track and the picture of one angle connected to it. So we have a kind of guarantee that at least one angle is connected. So the question is, how do you edit? I'm going to make a duplicate of this sequence, and it's in my timelines. Timelines are actually called sequences. Well, it's a very interesting point because timeline is the location where you put the sequence. And sequence can be a story, a promo, a bumper, a teaser, advertisement, a documentary, a feature, anything that you can name it. But it is essentially, it's a sequence of events. That's why the terminology is there. And timeline is the location. Now, the multicam start is set up here, and you can identify it in the timeline. I'm hovering around it. I'm going to duplicate that by right-click, duplicate the timeline. I'm going to show you quickly how editing is done. If I did my job right, start copy, I'm going to call it for you guys, Maybe my spelling is wrong, but so here's a naked. When I say naked, I'm meaning an uncut multi-camera. And the reason why it is uncut is because the angles are not on top of each other. I've seen many editors lining up 4 different layers and 4 different tracks, and they start to edit. That is not really time management wise really practical. So this is how Resolve does it. Remember, we did earlier a multicam where we have 4 different angles and we synchronize them based on the marking point. We also created, in this case, a duplicate of the one that we're going to cut. And we brought in the first angle, which is the wide angle. Now, here's how the multi-camera editing works. It is the coolest thing ever. On the left side, the source monitor shows me the 4 angles, but in order for me to connect it, so I have no control over the left side and no control over the right side, I only should have one control. On the bottom of the source monitor, there is a drop down and I can actually pick the multicam. Watch what happens. I lost now control over the source, which is the way it should be. So the right monitor drags and everybody else can be changed. So this is how you change angles. On the keyboard, which is, I believe, if you bring up Control Option or Command Option K on the Macintosh, on the Windows, it would be Control Alt K. You will notice that I have numbers, and number 1, angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, angle 4. So the number 1, 2, 3, 4 keys are going to give me the angle change while I am editing. When I say editing, I am doing it live for you guys now. I will not talk because usually when you do Zoom, the music and the talking kind of interferes. So watch me how I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to try to cut it on beat. So essentially, while I was playing, I was hitting those buttons 1, 2, 3, 4 to switch from angles. And you notice that in the timeline, there is a edit for each of those points where I cut it up. If you don't see it, Control plus zooms in a bit so you can see them. I'm going to make it bigger. There we go. And you can see how those edits are visible there. If I want to play it out, watch the right window. And it will tell you when it switches angles, it will show up in the left side, which angle is that both selected. Please watch it, the right window and the left window at the same time. So understand the concept. Now, if you need to make adjustments, and when I say adjustments, you need to have the edit earlier or later, you can go into your trim mode, which in this case would be the T button on the keyboard. And you can, with the dual roller trim, define where the meeting point is going to be matching up with a waveform. And that being one of those things that you will do in editing, that's going to be something that in other classes, if you sign up with us and do the classes, we can cover. I need to move on. So again, go back and find out what the uncut was. The uncut was, as I said, just one angle. Then I went into the multi-camera and I did cut up things, and the cut up basically shows me exactly that I cut up each of those angles. Now the question is, and this is the reason why we are dealing with the multi-camera, what happens if you have 4 different angles and each angle is different, lit different colors, and that's where the next step comes in. So if you are anxious to get into color, here's the time to go into color. I'm going to open up the 5th timeline, the 5th story, and I already have some things pre-cut. Let me just show you some weird stuff. Well, not weird stuff. Identify what's weird. Do you notice that in the 1, 2, 3, 4 angles, I have the natural colors, and in the 5th angle, one of the characters is a different color. That's the guitar player. And I'm going to show you a tool that is now part of the vocabulary that came in 17, where it can actually trace a person. That's very sophisticated, but it requires a specific way of getting things done. So my point is that if I play it out full screen, watch it. You see that I'm separating a character in the image from the background and giving her, in this case, to the lead singer, a different color. Now, how does that work, or how is that achievable? Here is the process. I will go into duplicating this magic mask thing by right-click on it, duplicate the timeline, and it's going to be called, I believe, for you guys, magic mask. And there we go, mask copy, magic mask for you guys. Command that saves it, and Command E exports it to the place where I was saving it. So in this case, I was saving it into that November webinar, and I save it DRP. DaVinci Resolve project is saved and replaces the one that I started with. Now comes the fun part. You have keyboard shortcuts that you can use to move around these icons. These are work areas, and they are also known as workspaces. So you can actually use the drop down and you can navigate between workspaces. And the keyboard shortcuts would be Shift 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's try that. So I'm going to go to the bottom, Shift 2. Yeah, that's the one. Shift 3, Shift 4, Shift 5, Shift 6. Shift 7, Shift 8, and Shift, that's it, the 9, which is the project setting. I would like to go back to Shift 6, which is what the color is. And if you are working with color, welcome to the world of how DaVinci does work with color. You will notice right away that when you open up the window, if you are following me and you have a DaVinci Resolve downloaded, you should have on the bottom left-hand side the color wheels. You should have the curves in the middle, and you should have either some scopes or any kind of keyframing, depending on how you have your thing set up. But the most important element is that in the center, you have the picture, the image that you're manipulating. When I say image, it is basically the frame of a segment. So you're always using a frame as a reference, and then everything in the segment is being changed. So let's go to the first shot. The first shot, if you understand it's a first shot, in this case, it's not. So I'm going to go back one more brick and one more brick. You can navigate by using up and down arrow to the right. And each time you hit the down arrow, it parks on the next segment's first frame. So the up arrow is moving to the left, down arrow moving to the right. If you're a Premiere or even Avid user, you have dealt with that. So let's park on the first shot. On the first shot, I see that the character is still kind of not in the right angle, but here is how the opening shot comes in. So my question is the color accurate? Do I deal with proper settings and all the rest of the stuff? And you have to answer those questions based on, are you working for a broadcast company which has specific broadcast boundaries, or you're doing it for web stuff like YouTube, Vimeo, or just sending it to your friends? So here are the measurement tools that I recommend you consider. First thing is park on a shot, which you can see that it's highlighted and it shows up in the program viewer. Right-click drop-down gives you a scopes option, and the scopes options identifies either 1, 2, or 4 scopes. Okay, in this case, maybe the 2 doesn't want to come in for some reason. What am I doing wrong? I need to reset my user setting. That's what it is. Anyways, the scopes right now are going to be giving me either waveform, vector scope, histogram, or parade. I generally start with a waveform because the waveform is giving you the amount of brightness and darkness. And you can see that the brightness is all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom is the darkness. So you can see that the, I could call it the blob is anything between the dark areas. We can see the dark pants and some bright areas, maybe the lights on the stage and maybe the light area, but it is something that you can adjust. And there are multiple ways of adjusting it. I generally start to talk about the nodes at this point. So the node is an environment that is different than the hierarchy, which is what Avid does, layers. In this case, node is connectable either way, any way you want it. And in this scenario, just because of time limitation, I'm going to use the serial node. And serial node is added by Alt S, Option S. There we go. So the first node is going to be the original image. And the second node is going to be the adjustment of the brightness and darkness. So if I want to adjust the brightness and darkness, couple of ways. Bottom left-hand corner, all the way to the left side is an auto balance. Auto balance doesn't do anything else other than saying, pushing the maximum brightness to the brightest and the minimum darkness to the darkness. And in this case, it doesn't give me that much leeway. So Command Z, undo or turn it off, on, and you should see a minor difference. If I'm going to reset it, reset the node, and let's do another one. The second option is something that people like a lot. You see these crosshairs next to the lift. That's a dark area. So I can click on the crosshair and pick the darkest area. So the darkest area is picked. And if I use the gain, which is the bright area, lift is the dark area, gamma is the gray area, gain is the bright area. So in the bright area, I activate and make sure that the brightest area is going to be the light right above the stage. There we go. So I define what the bright and dark is by using these crosshairs. Fine, not that bad, not that good either. But here's the third one, and this is where things become really interesting. You can manually say, I'm going to brighten up the dark area, bring it up or bring it down. Using the color wheels, there is a rolling thumb wheel on the bottom below that. You can say I'm moving it up or down. And you can see how the blob moves up. I'm talking about the blob here. You can also use the bright area and bring it down. And when that is all not likable, again, you can reset that or you can wipe out the node grade. And this is where you're going to love this. If you have worked with curves, say hello to your curves. Activate a junction point, which is anchor point, brighten up the bright areas and darken up the semi-dark areas. Cool. The difference between the two is really clearly visible if you do the Option D and open it up without width, but it is a moving environment. So why don't I play it for you? Notice that when you are dealing with the clip is looping. So if I go and play it full screen, watch it and listen to it. If I need changing it, Alt D without the adjustment. With the adjustment. So there's a little brightness here with the adjustment, and that is where you need to bring up maybe your friend called the vector scope. The vector scope identifies that I have a whole bunch of red or I have less red. You see the blob is moving into 11 o'clock. I have a lots of red. There we go, and no red. If you worked with color wheels, you know that 11 o'clock is red, M is magenta, it's around 1:30, around 3 o'clock is blue, around 5 o'clock is C cyan, and about 7 o'clock is green, and about 9 o'clock is yellow. So the blob seems to be going toward red, which is fine if you like it. If you don't, I am wasting your time. Let me reset that, and I will define that I will have it less saturated. Therefore, I go into the saturation, which is right below the gain, and desaturate it, make it black and white. Now it's silly. Or any combination. And this is where you and I will now start to talk about some colors. So you and I will reset the node. I will use one more node. Generally, the first node is going to be the node label, let's say balance, which is actually brightness and darkness. And then I will add a node that is going to be the color. So I'm going to right click on that node label and change it to color. Hello. Right click node label color. The balance, I'm going to go back to the lazy way, automatic balance. There we go. And in the color, I will make sure that the reds are a little bit different color. We talked about this tool called the qualifier. The qualifier is a pixel color-based environment. Therefore, if I pick a pixel, like for example, a red curtain or maybe something else, but red seems to be the dominant. If I pick the red curtain, it identifies that I picked the red. You don't know that unless you, watch this please, upper left-hand corner, and you identify, show me, hello, close the vector scope, show me that you picked the reds, and you can play through it and you can see how not all the reds were picked. So if I want to pick some more reds, do you see this little plus? I can pick more reds. That's one option. The other option would be move the red hue so I can define which reds am I picking. And I can identify that I am getting a wider range of reds, picking up some browns. And I can also identify that I'm going to saturate it and get the dark reds or get the bright reds, as well as the luminance, so I can grab the darker or lighter. So I can play with that. The point is that throughout this whole exercise, that red can be changed, and I will change it to a bluish look. How? Going back to the curves, pick the blue and push the blue. Now, if the blue is pushed, blue and red creates magenta. So the good idea would be here that I take the red out, okay? And if I take the red out, I come up with something, or take the red out altogether. When I say altogether, take the red out altogether. There we go. So my look right now is a different show. Look at the show. Now there's some leftover red. Oh, there's leftover red on the bottom. You can see that. And there's some leftover shadow red. You see the light goes around. So it maybe is not the good way to go about it, but I just wanted to explore this and explain to you that's how the DaVinci Resolve identifies when you deal with a color. Here is the cleanup. Right-click, reset the node. Please say hello to your new friend. That is the color picker, but it's not a qualifier plus minus. It is a 3D, not hue saturation elements, 3D. So the 3D actually picks up a variety of reds. You see, I'm picking the variety of red. So when I pick that variety, it is actually a much different amount of red. And I can actually desaturate that red. I can push that red, make it more redder, less redder. Maybe more redder is not a bad idea. Watch it. When I say redder, you understand that my grammar is not correct, but in color, it does make sense. So please watch it. Oh, wow. And I have some noise. So that's usually something that you want to avoid. But then when you have time, you can deal with it. I am obviously getting too much, and I think I went too far. Maybe just slightly change the hue from reddish to like something different, purplish. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that's maybe not that bad. Without, with. I have that purplish look. Without it, I have that reddish and all that stuff. So now you are going to be introduced to another tool, and this another tool is the one that I wanted to talk about. So why did I spend time with this? Because I would like to copy to all the other angles where this is going on. Which angle? Well, the angle, which is 6, angle that is 11, and there is another angle somewhere down the road. Okay, so how do I copy it? Here are specific tools. If I have something that I had here, let me reset it and reset the node grade. Please watch it. 2 already has an icon on it and signifies that I made some adjustments to it. And if I don't want to make it visible, I turn it off. In this case, I see it. Without it, with it. If you don't believe me, right-click, say hello to the scope, and the scope tells you yes. See that? It's red, and if I activate it, it's going toward magenta. Anyways, please observe. If I want to copy that information down the road to additional environments at the same angle, select the additional environments. In this case, I have 2 of them. If I have more of them, obviously, I would have to go further down. There we go. Holding down and holding down. So each of these angles that I selected by highlighting them, you see that I have them highlighted. I can say to the computer, please, whatever I selected on the first one, which in this case is the second shot, right-click and apply the grade to all of those angles. So all the angles that are now going to be the same, getting it. Nice. Let's get the guitar player because that's going to be a significant one. The guitar player is a standalone guy, and it seems to be very individual. I have a new tool that was introduced this generation, and this is called Magic Mask. Magic Mask to me is absolutely mind-bogglingly smart. And it works well if you have the predisposed or pre-required things. In this scenario, the guy is the only element. The guy is the only talent working. Okay, so the girl's hand comes in, but please pay attention to what I'm going to do. In the Magic Mask, you can pick a picker, and instead of picking the color, which is what we picked in the past, which is different from a shape, so I'm not going to draw a shape around it because that's going to be really hard to trace, and that's just silly. I will introduce you to your new friend called Magic Mask. See how Magic Mask works. Magic Mask gives you an option of picking up a person or features of a person, like, for example, the clothing, the face, hair, hat. I'm going to pick a person. So the person is the one. Here's how you pick it. I'm going to pick the person from like head and maybe arms, and maybe the guitar is part of his element. Do you notice that I drew a kind of random shape around him? Now, the question is, how does the computer analyze it? This is smart technology. This might take a little bit time, so I need your patience on this one. In my case, probably it will be less than 30 seconds. Hit the play the tracer. So the tracer will trace him. And you can see how it's kind of tracing it, but the question is going to be, what is the result look like? Okay. And when the tracing is done, I need to see what I traced. The tracing allows you to turn it on by showing the tracer. Hello, here's the tracing. Invert the mask. So now the mask is showing, hello, not that one. Here's the mask. There we go. Did it show up? No, it didn't show up. Okay, so show me the tracing. There we go. Don't invert the mask. Here's the tool. Okay, so the mask overlay shows the guy that he is the red one, okay? And you can see how the computer is tracing it, and some of the stuff where he's playing the strings is not selected. But my point is not that. My point is that I would like to have him black and white, okay? Turn that overlay off, go back to the beginning, go into the saturation, desaturate it, make him black and white, or I can go crazy and brighten him up a bit, which in this case is the brighten up. Now this needs to be kind of rendered, but if I look at it full screen, it's going to probably move jerkingly because it needs to be rendered, but watch how clean it is as a starting point. All right, so I misspoke. It doesn't do that. So the more motion you have, the harder it is. My point is that in talking heads, if you do interviews, this is perfect. So I need to render it out because I need to show you what the result is. Two choices. My easiest choice is go back to the edit point. Please right-click on the clip that you need to work with. In this case, I will right-click on the clip, and the drop-down gives, drop-down gives me a whole bunch of choices. I'm looking for render the cache color output. And when the color output is rendered, the red line above the clip turns blue, suggesting that you now generated into cache this rendered black and white. So when I play it full screen, please watch it. A Control E, just save it just in case Murphy comes around and crashes for me. Please watch it full screen. Okay, so it's not that good, but for a starting point, are you kidding me, for a couple of seconds? So my point when I say, are you kidding me, pick something that is not moving a lot and start with that. The more movement you have, the harder it will be. Let me show you what happened with the girl moving, because her hand moves and everything, so it picks up, or the blob is picking up other elements. Watch it. See that now picked up the guy behind her. So point is that this tool that we just introduced, which is only available in 17, is Magic Mask. I highly recommend you work with it. And in my scenario, because I had it applied to a separate node, I can turn it off, or I can turn it on. Or if I turn it off and I bypass it and I put some additional information, let's say make it brighter, the entire shot, and contrast it out and make it like really, really, well, I don't know what cool is, identify what cool is today. Cool is like so different. And in this case, because I need to re-render that, right click on it, render the cache to color output, hello. And that's going to be the closing of my quick webinar demo. So we covered the concept of how material is brought in. We covered the concept how to do the multi-camera. We covered how to edit multi-camera. And we talked about how to do individual shots and how to copy and paste color from one shot to another one. The last one is going to be how to change the entire show look. So make it all black and white or all sepia tone or anything like that. But let me play out and see what happens with the buttons. So here's the tool that I highly recommend you consider. It is a very specific tool. It happens to live in the color grading. So this is what I'm talking about. If you understood the concept that we are changing each clip's individual characteristics, and then we can copy and paste, for example, if this is the brightness, we're going to copy to all the close-ups. I have, let's say, one close-up, and I'm going to copy it from 9 to 13, right-click, add the, hello, apply the grade, there we go. So the 13 is going to be bright. If I change the 13 to, let's say, black and white, just to prove a point, there we go. I'm going to make the 9 now adjust to it. Pick the 9 to be adjusted, and right click on 13, apply the grade. Now the 9 and the 13 is going to be black and white. So the concept is very simple. I'm going to select all of them, which is Control A, Command A, say hello to your old friend, new friend, reset all the grades, and everybody is now default. Now, the producer says, can you have the whole show black and white? Fine. How? Well, you can copy and paste and all the rest of the stuff, but here's the best tool. In the upper right-hand corner, there is a clip window that if you can click on it and you change it to timeline, it changes to timeline. And when you open up timeline, there's nothing in there. Alt S adds a node, but this is a timeline node. It's almost like a filter above everybody else. So in this scenario, if I want to have everything brightened up, watch this, brighten up everything. Okay. And because we want to make it black and white or desaturate, make it about 10. And if I go and play the full screen, which in this case would be here, you will notice that in the timeline, the color of each of those clips is still red, but in the viewer, it's all, I think it's called Breaking Bad. I think that's the look. Don't trust me until I play it. It's live. You can't smile with that frown on your face, but you look so fine. So what did I do? That filter that I apply is not visible in the timeline. That filter is only visible in the color. And you notice that I had to switch from clip to timeline and that filter. That filter can be activated or deactivated. So that's my cool, quick way of explaining you a couple of things. And obviously, if you come to take classes with FMC, we have some classes running next week. All this stuff is going to be explained in much more detail. I hope that you had learned something out of this or saw something that might be interesting to you. And I need to get back to where I was. I was at the first one, find out where my material is. Chat, okay, thank you, Justy, okay, good. Almost done. Go back into media pool. This is where we started off. And in this case, we, I believe, covered everything. Power windows, magic mask, qualifiers, entire show changing, single angle, grading with nodes, and multicam setup and edit. So my name is Tibor Spiegel. This was a quick, fast-paced webinar. Hopefully you guys will come to us. We are Future Media Concept. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for coming to see us. And let's see if we can do that. There we go. Say hello to our sponsors because we need to thank them. And you see dots, there we go. Dell, if you take any classes with us, you would get some discounts with Dell as well as Saramonic. So if you have an evaluation to fill it out. Chat, thank you, good. I hope you had a good time. The day is still young for some of you. I don't know where you are. I'm in the Eastern Seaboard. I'm in Jersey. Thank you for your attention. Good luck to you. And I will stop recording. And that's that. This will be available sometimes within a couple of days. So talk to whoever signed you up. And if you want to take classes, next week we are running some Resolve classes. That's it.
Thank you, Tibor.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Good luck to you and stay well.